Now, I will ask Fabrice-Alain to talk a bit about the mechanics of working with Total. That will probably interest a number of participants. And sorry, just a little warning. Fabrice-Alain will talk largely about the formal procedures for contracting. And so he will cover the whole spectrum from contracting, I don't know, a helicopter service, where the qualification is extremely strict, to, I don't know, buying office supplies, where the qualification is virtually inexistent. So please listen to Fabrice-Alain with, I would say, a prisma of different nuances of what he's going to do. You're going to clarify those differences later, towards the end of the presentation, I understand. Fabrice.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Ike, for your brilliant presentation. First thing I'm going to present basically how Total is organized to work with suppliers. The first slide. Go back to this first slide, please. So it's important to understand, and I think this is what Ike explained throughout his presentation. Is that the main point for us is to work with and cooperate with companies, not on a one-shot basis, but in the long term. I will tell you why. I will explain. Basically, at the glance, to understand what we are talking about clearly. Basically, Total is working in more than 130 countries, so it's a very big company. We have more than 100,000 suppliers around the world. Some of them are considered as strategic suppliers. And for strategic suppliers, there is a close monitoring that is put in place. And the approach with all the suppliers, whatever the importance of them, is to work with suppliers on a relationship that is based on professionalism, on dialogue, and what is important, on meeting the commitments that we put in our contracts. So this is what is highlighted here. The main point for Total is to choose and work with suppliers that are responsible, to work with suppliers that are reliable, to work with suppliers that can understand the business we are working in and make sure that we have no interruption in our operations. So we want to make sure that there is a continuity in our operations. I think that you understood from the previous presentation that we are working on projects that can last for a very long time, that we are working on projects that are costly, that are risky, even if we try to, and we succeeded pretty well to maintain some kind of safety on our operations. And how can we obtain that? Maybe you missed it during the presentation of Ricardo, but the safety moment, the HAC statistics that we presented also covered our suppliers. Meaning that when we talk about our performances, whenever it's in the perimeter in our perimeter, we consider the performances of our suppliers and on all those aspects. How we can achieve that? Basically, for contract and procurement point of view, we do it in two main steps. First one is the qualification, and second one is the competition. The base case approach for Total is to organize competition to select the suppliers. And for us, it's the manner of being fair with all the actors. Hence, we have a stringent selection process. And the objective of this process, the process basically is based on international standards and also on proprietary standards that we have to make sure that we can still be a leader in the market and embark our suppliers to be also reliable and consistent suppliers. So the selection process is aimed at embark the suppliers on the main principles that we have. We call them the fundamental principle of purchasing. I will explain them later on. To ensure that we have high standards and reliability throughout the process, throughout the whole supply chain, and of course, to foster the development of the local suppliers. So, how do we do it? The qualification process at Total, we have 4 steps. So, first one is that there should be an interest. There should be a technical interest. Basically, it means that we have to, if we qualify a supplier because we believe that we can work with this supplier. Qualify a supplier because the range of services and goods that are provided by this supplier are needed in our operations. So this is the very first step. Then if there is an interest, we send you some documentation to fill in, some questionnaire to provide, some information to provide. We collect those data with the aim of identifying what are the risks if we are going to work with you and how we can address those risks. So we do a preliminary risk analysis. And then based on this analysis, we qualify or not the supplier. And we do the analysis on many criteria that I will present later on, and we have to make sure that for each criteria, the risk is acceptable. That's why, as Ricardo said before, it is not the same risk for contracting an helicopter company compared to contracting an office supplies company. So, based on the risks that are at stake, we will decide we will identify if those risks are acceptable or they are not acceptable. So once you have the qualification status, it's not the end of the process. Throughout the relationship, we do monitoring of the relationship. So we monitor the performance of the supplier. We can develop the performance of the supplier. And based on and we do an evaluation of the performance of the supplier. And based on that, you can maintain your qualification or lose your qualification. And again, for the monitoring process, depending on the risk, on the stakes, and all those stuff, it can be more or less stringent. Next, please. So, at the end of the qualification process, you have a status, basically meaning that you are qualified or you are qualified with reservation, meaning that we can decide to work with you, but we may identify some improvement areas that we will have to close throughout the business relationship, or you cannot be qualified. And what is important to understand, as I already said, we have to have acceptable risk for all the criteria. And another point that is important to understand is that we qualify the suppliers per legal entity, for a specific legal entity and for specific perimeters. So basically, you can be qualified to provide handling services, and you are not qualified enough to provide another service that is in the range of your activities, but for this service, you are basically, you cannot meet the criteria, and for this, you cannot be qualified. But all this information is provided to the suppliers when they are qualified. And when you are qualified, it is for a maximum period of 3 years. Next, please. And the point is that we only work with qualified suppliers, meaning no qualification, no contract. And during the qualification, you have the qualification process as I explained, but we launch call for tenders, we launch competition, we launch tendering process, and for each specific service, you can have additional requirements that are included in the specifications and that have to be fulfilled. It's only when we consider that the contractor is able to perform the service that we place a contract with this contractor. Next. So clearly, what are those criteria? We have six criteria. The first one is the HAC, so respect of health, safety, and environment standards. We have the social responsibility. I think that IKE presented all the awards that we received in terms of social sustainable development. Basically, I will go in details for each criteria, so I go through it. And we have anti-corruption, extremely important for us. Integrity, handling conflict of interest, preventing fraud. We have the financial criteria. Again, we said that the point is to ensure business continuity. So we need to have contractors that have the necessary financial health to fulfill their commitments. And we have also the technical, of course, the technical criteria. So basically, you should have the skills and resources to perform the job. And an important criteria as well is that we work with companies that comply with the local applicable laws. So we work with contractors that are that respect the administrative and legal requirements in the country. So the qualification is done by a team. It's not only one person deciding who will be a supplier for Total. It's a team of technical people, HAC people, and procurement people. And this team performed the risk analysis for each criteria. So the HAC one, basically, we are going to look at your organization and in terms of safety, the existence of the policies, the written policies, the procedures. We are going to look at your key performance indicators in terms of incidents that you have when you conduct your operations, and depending again on the risks, depending on the stakes, we are going to perform audits if necessary to make sure that all the process, all the system is working, basically. Then we have the anti-corruption. So for this, we have extremely stringent procedures and process that are applicable throughout our group. So it's important to understand that. We do it throughout the whole supply chain, meaning that we will look at not only the supplier itself, but we may ask you to perform similar exercise with your subcontractors. And when we will look at the supplier, we will look at the whole corporate structure of the supplier. So we will look at the very company requesting the qualification, but we will check all the ramifications that you may have, the owners, the stakeholders, all those stuff, and we will check all the warning flags and try to address them. So it starts with a questionnaire and then a risk analysis, and we go through the process. Next. Social responsibility. For us, it's extremely important that human rights at work and working conditions are respected in with our suppliers. We don't want to work with suppliers that do not pay their employees, for example, that have illegal employees in their organizations, that work with minors, for example. So that do not pay fair wages. So we look at all those aspects, and for us, it's also part of the social development. So it's extremely important for us that you respect those principles. And Total, as an organization, adhere to some standards from international organizations, multilateral organizations as well. Finance. We want to know and to make sure that you have the sufficient financial capacity to fulfill your commitments under the contract. So basically, we are not going to ask a supplier of cleaning services to have the same financial strength than the supplier for helicopters, for example. And we will look at the financial reports or the annual revenues for the past years and assess if there is a risk or not, depending on the service or the goods that are required. Then we have the technical aspect. So we'll check which type of supplier you are, if you're a distributor, if you are a manufacturer, and so on and so forth. What is your QA/QC, quality assurance and quality control system in place? It can be very light depending on what you provide, or very strict. Again, keep in mind that what we are looking for is reliable suppliers in a consistent manner. So we have to make sure that for whatever you supply, you are able to maintain the level of quality that we require under the contract. So we will check all those aspects in the technical criteria evaluation. And then, next please, the administrative and legal information. So again, it's all about working with suppliers that comply with laws, and for us, it's a prerequisite. So here, it's just an example of some requirements that we may have. For example, for a hair charter, basically we will look at two main aspects. We will check the operator itself, meaning the contractor itself, and we will check as well the aircraft that we are going to use. So for example, we will look at the organization and management, the quality and safety, the compliance with international standards. We will check the existence and the consistency of procedures and documentation. We'll check how the aircrew is managed, the training and all those stuff. We will check the aircraft itself. For us, it's throughout the company, we don't use aircraft that are older than 25 years. We will check how the equipment are inspected, the frequency, the consistency, how you are going to implement the findings, the corrections when you have the findings during inspection. So it's a very stringent process. And we are also going to look at the maintenance and all those stuff. And we have specialists, dedicated specialists throughout the group that perform those audits around the world. And so it's extremely stringent and extremely standardized. Next. And another example, which is a nice one, is related to the workshops. So to do some jobs, some repair jobs, some threading, and all those stuff. And basically, the main idea here is to understand that if you want, for example, to be a licensee because we source some equipment and from some suppliers, because most of the time we buy proprietary equipment with proprietary technologies, and for that you have to, if you want to be a licensee to maintain those equipment or to do some jobs on those equipment, you have to seek a license from those equipment manufacturers. And they will be in charge of qualifying you as a licensee to perform the audits. And with them, we have with the main manufacturer we work with, we have some quality control plans that are approved. We have some plants that are approved, and they will apply those the same requirement to their subcontractors. So if you are a licensee for a valid licensee for those equipment manufacturers, it will be okay for us. So we will review that the audit report, and from time to time, if necessary, we can perform some audits by ourselves. And then what are the typical requirements that we have in our contracts? Here we propose two examples, two type of contracts. So basically, we have the general type of the general services contract, the general type, the common contracts, low value, low risk, or not related to the very operations that we do offshore. And for those type of contracts, we have common requirements that are based on best practices around the world. So, and for E&P related contract, E&P stands for exploration and production activities, we have more stringent requirements. So, for example, for the financial aspect, in terms of guarantees, for simple contracts, so to say, we won't have any particular requirements for that. But for exploration and production, we may ask you to provide bank guarantees, to provide parent company guarantees when you are part of a global a corporate organization with international ramifications. We will look at the insurance, for example. For simple contract, we have we request a general coverage roughly 2.5 million. We also require that you provide insurance for your employees if there is no social security insurance system in the country. But for exploration and production activities, we are going to request higher coverage, so 5 to 10 million, and it depends. And for very specific services, it can be even more than that. As an example, for helicopters, we request $75 million coverage. And I'll maybe discuss this later, but we have specific scheme for exploration and production activities, which are pretty much standard in the industry, and that have implication in the type of insurance that we request from insurer. We have for anti-corruption, whatever the type of the contract, the requirements are the same. This again, I said that it applies to suppliers and subcontractors, and we have the right to audit and so on and so forth. For HAC, we have, of course, more stringent requirements for E&P operations. We have specific requirements that are based on the risks, and we have, even in the contract, you may see that we have a specific appendix related to health and HAC in our E&P contracts. And for simple contract, basically, we will request that you have a system that is commensurate with the type of activity that you have. So it can be very light to stringent depending on what you are providing. And for subcontracting, one principle for us is that we want to have a look to the part of the service that you plan to subcontract. We have a look at it. We approve the the subcontractors, again, in the same spirit of keeping the business continuity and managing the risk throughout the supply chain. And you will have the responsibility to make sure that your subcontractors follow the same HAC requirement that you have under the main contract and the same anti-corruption requirements that you have in the main contract. And the liability regime is the common regime for simple contract, and there is a specific regime that is specific to oil and gas industry that we call the knock-for-knock regime, which allows the parties to reduce to get the best protection that they can get in the insurance market, and to make sure that the risks are properly covered. This is the basic idea behind the knock-for-knock regime. We will explain it later on if necessary. So, the quick wins and future opportunities that we may have. Next, please. Next. Okay, as Ricardo mentioned, we are here. It's been like 3 to 4 months that we are here, but we managed to put in place some contract quickly. For general services contract, we already put in place some contracts that are related to the fact that we are here, and it's important to understand that because it is not always the case for all the operators, but the fact that we are fully installed and implemented in Suriname allows to trigger some opportunities. So for IT, for housing and accommodation, for office leasing, car leasing, recruitment, travel agency, office furniture and supplies. So we already started, and we put some contracts already in place for that. Next. And also for the operations, we already put in place some contracts that are related to the HAC needs. We have important contracts that are being put in place for waste management, for logistics, for charter flights, for fuel supply, for the vessels and the drilling units. And one important point is that we are working to put in place a logistics base in Suriname, which will trigger also some over satellite services around that. And this is what we next. We will show a little bit in the next slide. Okay, so as I said, the logistics base is not only going to scale up some local contracting, because we will part of the plan will be to put in place a base to store our equipment, the pipes and some other equipment, and the fact that those pipes will be here in Suriname will immediately trigger some over satellite contracts like handling, lifting, trucking, inspection of the pipes, maintenance of the pipes, providing cargo carrying units to supply the equipment offshore, and ultimately to the implementation of workshops and to do repairs and threading and so on and so forth. So what you see here is that along the way, the job and the contracts and the manpower will increase as long as we get implemented for those services. And I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you.